the two layers that I see to this is that and there's two things I try to incorporate in the things I talk about and the things that I've written about. There's the method, how the hell do you get strong in the first place, which is what everybody's after. But the thing that the hidden question that people don't know until it's too late is, how do you stay in one piece? And that's what really interests me about this, because I had relayed to you already that I spent a good 10 years with my lower back just obliterated. And I compete, I don't deal with necessarily the sheer overload that you would as a quick lifter, but it's almost like in equal and opposite fashion, almost worse, because I'm doing a lot of bending over, picking up odd objects, stone loading, Carroll carries, yoke runs, which are like the worst thing in the world for your back. And I had to find a way to stay in one piece. And the stuff that I came around with, or I came across with you and McGill, was just absolutely invaluable. I mean, that's where it clicked, and I was actually able to stay healthy and progress. You mentioned, and this one stood out to me, you mentioned cumulative wear, because from the people I've talked to, there seems to be like a bit of controversy here. I've talked a couple questions we'll talk about it been brought up regarding McGill school of thought versus something like barbell medicine, which I'm just starting to learn about the differences myself. But I have a good buddy who's a strongman competitor, but also a doctor, and I think he's done some work with those guys. And he's quick to cite studies that kind of dismiss the degenerative effects of lifting over time. And they tend to worry more about like not catastrophizing issues or building things up to be worse than they are. And I feel like that's really easy for somebody to do when they haven't had the 3 months of bed rest they had to take, to stay drugged up and keep themselves, alive and not in pain, and then figure out how to slowly scrap themselves back together. So when you say cumulative wear, I mean, it's your stance that over time dealing with these heavy loads and trying to progress, I mean, that kind of chews you up over time, right?
Well, I don't really think that cumulative load would be up for debate. Let's use Conor McGregor this weekend for an example. Micro fractures turn into macro. How do micro fractures happen? It's cumulative. Cumulative load leads to a break. So I think that that would apply to any tissue or any bone in the body, wouldn't it? So end plates with the vertebra, cumulative load, trauma, bone edema, fractures, disc bulges. So here's the thing, and we can just get right to it. McGill has studied the spine in a lab clinic training center longer than the barbell medicine guys have been alive. Okay? Longer than they've been alive. Do you think that in the 31 years he missed some things that they've just discovered in the last couple of years? Do you think that?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay. Yeah, so that's one thing. So by appealing to authority, yes, for sure. And people say that, oh, well, he's old-fashioned. Have you ever had a conversation with the man to talk about the intricacies of back pain and the nerve roots and the load and the people that he's helped? He can't tell you everyone that he's helped. He's helped the top people in the NBA, MLB, UFC. He's openly talked about his work with GSP. He's openly talked about his work with Blaine Sumner. He's openly talked about his work with JP Price, and those are just a couple of raw and equipped lifters. For example, Shane Carwin, he worked with, heavyweight champion, missed by that much against Brock Lesnar. So he's worked with the best of the best. He's had people that only medalists in the whole Canadian Olympics have been his athletes. But because of the arrangements he has with the clients, he doesn't go around bragging about everyone that he helps, because he can't.
Yeah.
He literally can't. So he's been helping people for so long, and he's learned so much. He's published over 231 studies. He's written 6 books. So I think he has a pretty good understanding of back pain. The problem is right now with the internet, you can have a one-sided argument where you just waylay somebody for 5 minutes, and meanwhile, you're misinterpreting the data from the start because you don't have context. You're new to it. You don't understand it. So when people take him out of context, like they do all the time, where they say, flexion is bad. Find me a time where Stu says flexion is bad. He doesn't say that unless it's one of your pain generators. Then you need to back off with it. The McGill method is about identifying the cause and removing the cause, building pain-free capacity, moving around the injury with special tools, not just the McGill Big 3, That's a starting point. That's a neutral spine sparing exercise that can really help bolster someone's core if they have instability.
It's vital if they're not used to it. And having gone through that myself, I can't explain just from my own anecdotal experience, but for going from being sidelined for a decade to actually being able to get stronger in my mid late 30s. I was absolutely astonished. And he talks about building endurance first. I was astonished about how unable I was to do something as simple as keep my spine in one place while moving my extremities. It was like my midsection was made of Jello pudding. And it wasn't just that it burned or it was hard or it was fatiguing. It was that like the switch would just turn off. They would just go away. So when you're trying to figure out like how the hell are you going to do that under a 700-pound deadlift if you can't do it for 10 seconds with just your body weight in position? And again, I think it's a lot of dismissiveness by people that didn't have to do the hard work. And what you talked about right there is pretty non-controversial. If something hurts, you don't do the thing that hurts, right? You avoid it, you let yourself recover, you find ways to work around, and then you start addressing the issue. And when you're looking at, I mean, you said appeal to authority, it's like, well, yeah, but we all do at all times. But if you have, there's a theoretical component of science, but it's the experimental where we figure out if the shit actually works or not. So if you have a list,
it kind of worked. Yeah, it kind of worked with me.
Yeah, if you have a fleshed out system where you can show that not just, I have some success stories, but at the highest levels, I can routinely kind of piece people back together. That's compelling to me. And that's not, I'm not just trying to show myself as a McGill fanboy, but it's like when something kind of saves you, and not to, I don't know to what degree there could be other methods or other approaches. It's like just like there are with anything. But if something shows itself as being productive and useful over a long period of time,
for sure.
It's such a high level when shit's actually on the line, right? There's stuff at stake when you're dealing with those athletes. You don't have the luxury of giving the wrong answer or of painting with a broad brush. You got to know what the deal is and work with that. So I hold that in pretty high regard. And you talked about age discrepancy and experience discrepancy, and experts in the age of the internet. It's really tempting to try and be contrarian just to build a brand. It's a real easy route, and I'm finding, it's even hard for me to try to navigate back to common sense or to what seems to be objectively true when it's so easy just to get a little controversy, just to get a little counter to good information.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good to have dialogue. It's good to have dialogue.
Absolutely.
But when you attack, but when you just straight up attack someone's methods and you don't have specifics that you can disprove, or if you attack someone, have a debate with them. I'll do that with someone instead of arguing back and forth on the internet. There was a guy the other day that was bastardizing McGill's stuff and saying how it doesn't work, and then he went on to say, well, later on I figured out I didn't know how to do the bird dog.
Yeah.
But hold on a second, dude. You can't make a video saying how this is a con of the McGill Big Three, and then later say, I didn't know how to do it, and then post the video of you saying you learned how to do it and it's still wrong. You can tell someone, you can explain it to them, but you can't understand it for them.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to have a discussion with people. And you know what? A lot of the time when the internet is removed and you're face-to-face with someone, even on a Skype call or something like this, you can have a discussion. And a lot of the times you're not so far apart from your ideals and your principles and you think you are, but sometimes you just flat out are, because there are people out there that think McGill is the dumbest person in the world, and the stuff they say about him is just nothing they would say to his face, because he would annihilate them with evidence and experience and studies.
Of course, we live in the age of hot takes, and it's not just that everybody has been taught that they're entitled to their opinion, which is about the worst like old world wisdom I can think of, but it's that people feel like it should be weighted just as seriously, and they get to espouse it in very aggressive terms without any of the accountability that comes with being on the hook for whether you're right or wrong. And that's what emboldens a lot of people. And you're right, face-to-face conversations go very differently, but that's what real social interaction is, and that's what sharpens your discussion so you can actually try to get to the right answer.